Sakura Haruno's story begins quietly, far from the wars, rivalries, and great battles that would later shape her life. Unlike the children born into famous clans, Sakura grew up as an ordinary girl in the Hidden Leaf village. She had no secret bloodline, no legendary surname, and no special abilities that set her apart at birth. What defined her earliest years was something far more human: insecurity. As a child, Sakura was known for her intelligence and bright personality, but she was also sensitive about her appearance, particularly the size of her forehead. This insecurity, though small on the surface, weighed heavily on her, shaping how she saw herself and how she thought others saw her. It is here that her first important relationship began, not with Naruto or Sasuke, but with Ino Yamanaka. Ino was confident, outgoing, and popular. Where Sakura often hid behind her bangs, Ino encouraged her to raise her head high. She even gave Sakura a ribbon to wear, telling her she had nothing to be ashamed of. Their friendship was one of mentorship at first, with Ino guiding Sakura towards self-confidence. For Sakura, this bond was proof that even the things she felt insecure about could be softened by kindness. But like so many bonds in the Naruto world, it would eventually be tested. When both girls entered the academy, their friendship began to shift. It was there that Sakura developed a crush on Sasuke Uchiha, one of the most talented students of their generation. Sasuke was handsome, skilled, and mysterious, carrying the aura of someone destined for greatness. Ino, too, admired him. And so, what was once a warm friendship between the two girls gradually cooled into rivalry. For Sakura, it was the first time she allowed her feelings to push her away from someone who had once been her greatest supporter. Still, Sakura excelled academically. Unlike Naruto, who struggled with his studies, or Sasuke, who carried natural genius, Sakura's strengths were found in her book smarts and chakra control. She was one of the top students in the classroom, mastering the theoretical aspects of being a ninja with ease. But the academy was not just about tests and theory, it was also about physical ability, endurance, and combat skills. In these areas, Sakura often lagged behind. Her precise chakra control hinted at her potential, but her lack of confidence in battle made her hesitant. These early days defined the contrast in Sakura's personality: intelligent, capable, and diligent, yet held back by self-doubt and an over-reliance on others. This contrast would follow her into her future as a shinobi, where time and again she would be forced to confront her insecurities and decide whether to hide behind others or step forward herself. The world outside the academy, however, was not peaceful. Though Sakura was sheltered from the great conflicts that had scarred the generations before her, the scars of war lingered over Konoha. She grew up hearing stories of heroes and tragedies, of the great Sannin, of the fourth Hokage, and of the Nine Tails attack that devastated the village not long before her birth. But as a child, she was more concerned with fitting in, being accepted, and winning the attention of Sasuke than with the larger forces that shaped the shinobi world. At this stage in her life, Sakura's focus was narrow. Her rivalries and friendships, her small victories and embarrassments at the academy, and her dream of being acknowledged, these were the things that mattered most to her. In a way, this ordinariness is what makes Sakura's story so striking. Unlike Naruto, who bore the burden of being a Jinchuriki, or Sasuke, who carried the trauma of a massacre, Sakura began without such dramatic weight. She was not defined by tragedy, but by the everyday challenges of adolescence. Yet, even in these simple beginnings, her story carried the seeds of what she would become. Her rivalry with Ino would fuel her determination. Her crush on Sasuke would set in motion choices and emotions that defined her teenage years. Her academic talent and chakra control hinted at the medical expertise she would later master. And her insecurities, the very things she struggled with as a child, would one day become the fuel for her growth into a strong, compassionate kunoichi. By the time Sakura graduated from the academy, she was bright, clever, and full of potential, though she did not yet know how to use it. She wore her hair long, partly because she believed Sasuke preferred girls that way, and partly because she wanted to feel feminine and pretty. This attention to outward appearance showed how much she still defined herself by how others saw her. But beneath the surface, her heart carried both strength and vulnerability, waiting for the right trials to bring them to light. It is easy, looking back, to underestimate this phase of Sakura's life. Compared to the grand battles and high-stakes confrontations that lay ahead, her childhood struggles may seem small, but they are not insignificant. They show the roots of a character who would transform dramatically over time. They reveal that strength is not always born in moments of crisis. It can also grow from the quiet insecurities of youth, from friendships tested, from rivalries sparked, and from the longing to be more than what you are today. Sakura's early aspirations were simple. She wanted recognition. She wanted love. She wanted to stand confidently in her own skin, even if she didn't yet know how. These goals, while small on the surface, would guide her actions again and again as she matured into the kunoichi we know. Her childhood chapter closes not with a great battle or loss, but with her stepping forward into her future as a genin of Konoha. The girl who once hid behind her bangs had begun to raise her head high, ready to face the challenges of the shinobi world. What awaited her was the formation of Team 7, and with it, the beginning of bonds that would change her life forever. Graduating from the academy was the first real step in Sakura Haruno's journey as a shinobi. She had worked hard to master the basics, scoring high marks on written tests and demonstrating careful chakra control, but now came the real challenge, applying those skills in the field. Sakura had no way of knowing it, but her future would be tied forever to two boys who could not have been more different from one another, Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha. Team assignments at the academy were made carefully. Each team was meant to balance talent, personality, and potential. When Sakura learned that she was placed on Team 7 alongside Sasuke, she could hardly believe her luck. Her crush on him was no secret to herself, and she saw this as her chance to get closer. At the same time, her disappointment was clear when she realized Naruto Uzumaki was also on the team. To Sakura, Naruto was an annoyance, a loud and clumsy classmate who seemed to always draw attention for the wrong reasons. He played pranks, shouted in class, and often embarrassed himself. Where Sasuke was quiet, mysterious, and talented, Naruto was noisy, awkward, and seemingly untalented. Sakura's early interactions with Naruto reflected her immaturity. She dismissed him, teased him, and at times showed little patience. What she did not yet see was that Naruto's persistence and unshakable spirit would become one of the most important influences in her life. Their teacher was Kakashi Hatake, a seasoned jonin whose reputation was legendary, though the new genin knew little about him. Kakashi appeared late to their first meeting, setting the tone for his laid-back and unpredictable style. To get to know his students, Kakashi asked each of them to share their likes, dislikes, and dreams. Sakura shyly admitted her feelings for Sasuke, framing her goals around him rather than defining them for herself. This moment reflected how much of her identity was still tied to others, her crush, her rivalries, and her desire for acknowledgement. But Kakashi was not interested in surface-level answers. He knew the true test of a shinobi team lay in cooperation. To evaluate Team 7, he put them through the famous bell test. The goal was simple. The students had to take 2 bells from Kakashi. Only 2 were available, meaning one of them would be left out. The test seemed straightforward, but it was designed to reveal whether they could put aside their egos and work together. Sakura struggled during the bell test. She lacked the combat skills to seriously threaten Kakashi and fell victim to one of his genjutsu, where she imagined Sasuke in danger and fainted in fear. It was a harsh reminder of her inexperience. At the same time, her intelligence and awareness of her teammates showed glimpses of her potential. By the end of the test, none of the students had secured a bell. Kakashi declared that they had failed. But when he saw them share food with one another, despite his explicit orders not to, he revealed the real lesson. Rules mattered, yes, but the true essence of a shinobi was teamwork. Those who break the rules are scum, Kakashi told them. But those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. With that lesson, Team 7 was officially formed. For Sakura, this was the first step toward understanding that being a ninja was not about chasing admiration or romance, but about loyalty, trust, and the bonds between people. Their early missions, however, did little to test those ideals. Like most new genin, Team 7 was assigned mundane tasks: walking dogs, finding lost cats, pulling weeds, and helping with chores. Sakura often found herself frustrated with Naruto's antics, especially his constant attempts to outshine Sasuke. But beneath her irritation, she began to notice Naruto's determination. He never gave up, no matter how small or humiliating the task. This persistence would eventually inspire her, though at the time she was too focused on Sasuke to realize it. The true shift came when Team 7 received their first C-rank mission, one that would take them beyond the village walls and into real danger. Their client, Tazuna, was a bridge builder from the Land of Waves. What was supposed to be a routine escort mission quickly spiraled into something far more dangerous, exposing Sakura to the harsh realities of the shinobi world. Even before that mission began, though, the seeds of Team 7's bond had been planted. Naruto's eagerness, Sasuke's quiet confidence, and Kakashi's patient wisdom all played against Sakura's insecurities and intelligence. She was not the strongest of the group, but she was learning. Each small mission, each bickering argument, and each shared laugh after a long day was shaping her. For Sakura, these first steps with Team 7 were about more than just training. They were about belonging. She was no longer a student in the academy, no longer defined by her forehead or her rivalry with Ino. She was now a member of a team, a family of sorts, that would go on to change the fate of the world. But at this early stage, she could not see that future. All she knew was that she stood alongside Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi, ready for whatever challenges came next. And those challenges would come quickly, beginning with the mission that would test not only her courage, but the strength of their bond as a team. The Land of Waves awaited, and with it, the first true trial of Sakura Haruno's young life as a shinobi. When Team 7 accepted their mission to escort the bridge builder Tazuna to the Land of Waves, Sakura thought it would be another simple task. Up to that point, their duties had been uneventful: walking dogs, finding cats, pulling weeds, missions that felt more like chores than the noble work of shinobi. To Sakura, this mission outside the walls of Konoha felt like her first real chance to prove herself. She imagined travelling with Sasuke, impressing him with her abilities, and finally stepping into a role greater than just the girl who admired from the sidelines. But very quickly, she realized this mission would be unlike anything she had imagined. The journey began quietly enough. Tazuna, their client, was dismissive and rough in his attitude. He doubted their ability to protect him, especially with such young escorts. Sakura bristled at his comments, but said little. Deep down, she wondered if perhaps he was right. Compared to Naruto's recklessness and Sasuke's natural talent, she still wasn't sure what she brought to the team. Then came the first true danger. 2 missing nin, the demon brothers, ambushed the group. Their chain attack seemed lethal, and for a moment Sakura froze. She had never faced real killing intent before. Her training at the academy had been theory, drills, and sparring, never this raw threat. Naruto nearly lost his life in that ambush, and it was Sasuke who moved without hesitation, protecting his comrades with calm skill. Kakashi handled the situation, but the fight left Sakura shaken. In her heart, she felt the sharp sting of inadequacy. When danger came, she had hesitated, while her teammates had acted. She realized that being a kunoichi meant more than scoring well on written tests or knowing the rules of chakra. It meant facing fear and moving forward anyway. That first encounter planted a quiet seed of determination, though she did not yet know how to nurture it. As the mission continued, the threats only grew. Team 7 came face to face with Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the hidden mist. His presence was suffocating, his killing intent so strong that Sakura felt her body go rigid. For the first time, she truly grasped the gap between a genin and a veteran shinobi. Watching Kakashi clash with Zabuza was like witnessing forces of nature collide, water dragons crashing, steel against steel, strategies unfolding faster than her eyes could follow. When Kakashi was trapped in the water prison jutsu, Naruto and Sasuke risked everything to free him, coordinating their movements in a way that shocked even Sakura. She wanted to help, but her role was clear: protect Tazuna. And so she stood guard, kunai in hand, watching her teammates hurl themselves into danger. On the surface, her role may have seemed small, but it was not meaningless. She was learning discipline, learning that missions were not about ego, but about ensuring everyone survived. After that battle, the group continued to Tazuna's village. Along the way, Sakura began to see a larger picture of the shinobi world. The land of waves was poor and oppressed under the iron grip of Gato, a tyrant who had strangled the country's hope. Sakura saw the fear in the villagers' eyes, the hunger in their faces. For the first time, she began to understand why shinobi mattered, not just for glory or strength, but for the protection of people who had no means to protect themselves. Training continued during their stay, with Naruto pushing himself relentlessly. Though Sakura still dismissed his antics, she noticed his determination. He stumbled, shouted, and failed more often than he succeeded, but he never quit. Watching him from the side, Sakura began to feel a flicker of respect, even if she didn't voice it. The final confrontation with Zabuza came swiftly, and with him, Haku, his loyal companion. Haku was soft-spoken, almost kind, yet deadly in battle. His crystal ice mirror's technique trapped Sasuke and Naruto in a deadly prison. From the sidelines, Sakura's heart pounded as she watched the 2 boys fight desperately against a foe far beyond their level. When Sasuke was struck down, seemingly fatally, Sakura's world shattered. She rushed to his side, her tears falling freely as she called his name. The grief she felt in that moment revealed the depth of her feelings. Until then, her crush had often been portrayed as shallow, a schoolgirl's infatuation. But here, faced with the possibility of losing Sasuke forever, her emotions came into focus. This was not just admiration, it was love, fear, and pain woven together. Her tears over Sasuke also revealed something else: her humanity. In a world where shinobi were trained to suppress emotions, Sakura's open grief was a reminder that compassion and vulnerability had their place too. As she clung to Sasuke, it was Naruto who rose to continue the fight. Unleashing the power of the Nine Tails for the first time, he overwhelmed Haku with raw, terrifying energy. For Sakura, seeing Naruto in that moment was shocking. The boy she had dismissed as clumsy and foolish now carried within him a power that could shake the battlefield. It was the first time she truly began to realize that Naruto was not someone to overlook. The battle's conclusion was tragic. Haku, choosing loyalty to Zabuza above his own life, sacrificed himself to block Kakashi's attack. Zabuza, once cold and merciless, revealed his humanity in his final moments. Betrayed by Gato, wounded and dying, he asked only to be laid to rest beside Haku. Sakura watched this unfold in silence, her heart heavy. She saw that even in enemies, there were bonds, loyalties, and love. The shinobi world was not black and white, it was painted in shades of grey. The lesson of Zabuza and Haku would stay with her. That strength alone was not what defined a person, but the connections they held and the choices they made in the end. When Gato's men fled and the villagers rose in defiance, the spirit of the Land of Waves began to change. The bridge, completed through Tezuna's perseverance, became a symbol of hope. It was named the Great Naruto Bridge, in honor of Naruto's unyielding determination. For Sakura, the mission ended not with triumph, but with reflection. She had not fought with the same bravery as Naruto or Sasuke, nor delivered the final blows. But she had protected their client, stood her ground, and faced fear without running. More importantly, she had opened her eyes to the wider world, the pain of the villagers, the bonds of enemies, and the reality that being a ninja was not about glory, but about sacrifice. As Team 7 began the long walk back to Konoha, Sakura carried these lessons with her. She was no longer just the girl worried about her forehead, no longer just a rival to Ino or a fangirl chasing after Sasuke. She had seen death, grief, loyalty, and sacrifice. She had begun to understand that the path of a shinobi was far heavier than she had imagined. And though she still had far to go, this first true mission outside the village was the spark that would ignite her growth. For Sakura Haruno, the Land of Waves was the beginning of transformation, from an ordinary girl to a kunoichi, who would one day stand among legends. After the mission to the Land of Waves, Team 7 returned to the Hidden Leaf Village, changed in ways they did not yet fully understand. For Naruto, it was his first real taste of recognition. For Sasuke, it was a reminder of the power he sought, and for Sakura, though her role had been quieter, it had opened her eyes to the reality of what it meant to be a shinobi. She had seen true danger, she had felt fear tighten around her heart, and she had watched death unfold before her eyes. Those memories lingered as the village announced the beginning of the Chunin exams, a trial that promised to test the strength, intelligence, and spirit of every genin who dared to enter. For Sakura, the exams felt both exciting and terrifying. She had always been bright, her intellect sharp enough to earn high marks in the academy, but she still questioned her worth compared to Naruto's persistence or Sasuke's talent. This, she thought, might be her chance to prove she belonged, not just as the girl who stood behind her teammates, but as a shinobi in her own right. The first stage of the exams was a written test. Rows upon rows of genin filled the examination hall, each team placed under the watchful eyes of stern proctors. The questions placed before them were impossibly difficult, designed far beyond the level of new shinobi. Most of the participants realized quickly that the point was not to answer the questions on their own, but to cheat without being caught. The examiners wanted to see who could adapt, who could think creatively, and who could keep their composure under pressure. Sakura, however, had no need to cheat. Her academic talent was genuine, her memory sharp, and her control over detail impressive. She answered steadily, her pen moving across the page with confidence, but her own ease only deepened her worry. If she could finish the exam honestly, could her teammates? She glanced at Naruto and felt her stomach twist. He stared blankly at the paper, clearly lost, and she feared that he would drag the entire team down. The more she thought about it, the heavier the weight pressed on her chest. When the proctor announced the final question, the tension in the room sharpened like a blade. Anyone who attempted it and failed would be barred from ever taking the exams again. Worse, their entire team would be disqualified along with them. It was a cruel rule, designed to strip away confidence. Sakura's hand trembled. She thought of Naruto, certain that he had not been able to answer the questions. She thought of his dreams, how much he wanted to grow stronger, and for a moment she considered raising her hand and giving up for his sake. But then she looked at him again. Naruto, despite everything, refused to quit. He declared with fiery determination that he would not back down. His courage was infectious. In that instant, Sakura lowered her hand and stayed. She realized that the test was never truly about answers, but about willpower, and that strength was not only measured by knowledge, but by the refusal to surrender. The second stage of the exams was unlike anything she had faced before. The forest of death was vast and treacherous, filled with predators both animal and human. Teams were given either a heaven or an earth scroll, and told they must obtain the opposite one to advance. It was not enough to be clever. Here, survival was everything. At first, Sakura relied heavily on Sasuke's skill and Naruto's reckless courage, as she always had. But when everything seemed to crumble, when both her teammates were incapacitated, Naruto unconscious, and Sasuke overwhelmed by the curse mark that Orochimaru had placed on him, the responsibility fell squarely on her shoulders. She was terrified. Her body shook with the weight of it, but instead of collapsing, she chose to fight. In that moment, Sakura did something symbolic. She took a kunai and cut away her long hair. To an outsider, it might have seemed meaningless, just hair falling to the ground. But for Sakura, it was everything. She had grown her hair long because she thought Sasuke preferred girls that way, because she wanted to be seen as pretty, because she clung to appearances instead of strength. Cutting it away was her declaration that she was done with immaturity. She would no longer live as the girl who stood behind others. She was ready to stand on her own, even if she bled, even if she fell. Her desperate stand against the Sound Ninja was not polished or graceful. She scratched, clawed, and even bit at her enemies to protect her teammates. She fought with every ounce of spirit she had, and though she was not victorious in the traditional sense, she endured. Her bloodied face and torn body told the story of a girl who had chosen to fight rather than yield. Help came in the form of Rock Lee, who fought bravely to protect her, and later from Ino and her teammates. For Sakura, Ino's intervention carried deep meaning. Their friendship had soured long ago, replaced by rivalry over Sasuke. Yet, in this moment of danger, Ino stood by her side, reminded of the bond they had once shared. It was a turning point for Sakura. A reminder that connection mattered more than rivalry. Even in the harshest of circumstances, friendship could endure. The terror of the forest was magnified by the shadow of Orochimaru. His appearance was overwhelming. Even standing near him was enough to paralyze Sakura. His power was unlike anything she had ever felt, a crushing reminder of how small and fragile her team truly was. Watching Sasuke writhe under the curse mark's influence tore at her heart. She wanted to save him, to ease his suffering, but she had no power to do so. All she could offer was her presence, her determination to stay by his side no matter what. That helplessness weighed heavily, carving deep into her mind the understanding that she would need greater strength if she ever hoped to protect the people she loved. By the time Team 7 stumbled out of the Forest of Death, they were battered, scarred, and exhausted, but they were alive. For Sakura, the forest had been a crucible. She had learned that strength was not measured only by how hard you could strike, but by how firmly you could stand when fear threatened to break you. She had faced enemies far stronger than herself, and though she had not won in the traditional sense, she had not faltered. Her bonds had also deepened. Naruto had inspired her with his unshakable will during the written exam. Sasuke had reminded her of the fragility of life, his suffering under the curse mark seared into her memory. And Ino had shown her that friendship was not something to discard lightly, but something that could survive rivalry and grow stronger in hardship. The Sakura who emerged from the Forest of Death was not the same girl who had entered. She had cut away her immaturity, faced her fear, and stood her ground. Though her journey was far from complete, though she still had much to learn and many challenges to face, this was the beginning of her transformation into the kunoichi she was destined to become. The Chunin exams were far from over. Ahead lay one-on-one battles that would test not just her skill, but her heart. And beyond those battles, an invasion loomed that would shake the village to its core. But for now, the lesson of the Forest of Death was clear. Sakura Haruno was no longer simply the clever girl hiding behind others. She had begun to step forward, to find her own strength, and to show that she too could endure the darkness of the shinobi world. After the horrors of the Forest of Death, Team 7 advanced to the next stage of the Chunin exams. They carried the scars of what they had endured, Naruto with his reckless courage, Sasuke weakened but still determined after Orochimaru's attack, and Sakura, who had cut her hair and chosen to stand firm in the face of overwhelming fear. Yet even with those lessons behind them, what awaited was unlike anything Sakura had faced before. The second stage had reduced the number of teams drastically, and with so many participants still remaining, a round of preliminaries was held to narrow the field before the final tournament. These battles would not be written tests or survival trials. They were one-on-one fights in an arena where the only way forward was to defeat another genin in direct combat. For Sakura, who had always relied more on intelligence than physical prowess, the thought of fighting alone in front of everyone was daunting. But she also knew this was a chance to show the growth she had begun to feel inside. When her name was called, and she saw that her opponent was Ino Yamanaka, a strange heaviness filled her chest. This was not just a fight between competitors. It was the resurfacing of a friendship that had once been her source of strength. Ino had been the one to encourage her when she was a shy, self-conscious child, the one who had given her confidence when she was too timid to stand on her own. Yet their bond had been fractured by rivalry over Sasuke, leaving behind sharp edges where once there had been warmth. Now, in front of the crowd, their unresolved feelings and history stood between them. The fight began with both girls trading blows, neither one dominating the other. Ino's family techniques, particularly her ability to use the mind transfer jutsu, gave her unique advantages. Sakura relied on her chakra control and determination, pushing back with more ferocity than Ino expected. The battle quickly became not only physical but emotional. Every strike carried the weight of their past, every clash an echo of their childhood friendship. At one point, Ino managed to use her mind transfer to take control of Sakura's body. For the spectators, It seemed the fight was over, that Ino would claim victory by forcing Sakura to surrender. But in that moment, the strength of Sakura's will revealed itself. Deep within her, she resisted, pushing back against Ino's control with sheer determination. The crowd was stunned, and so was Ino. Sakura's refusal to give in showed that she had grown beyond the timid girl she once was. She would not let anyone, not even her former best friend, dictate her path. The match ended in a draw, with both girls collapsing from exhaustion. Neither advanced to the next round, but for Sakura, the outcome was not a loss. It was proof that she had grown strong enough to stand her ground. The fight also reopened something between her and Ino, a reminder that rivalry could not erase the bond they had once shared. For Sakura, that reconciliation mattered as much as victory. While Sakura did not move forward, she watched the battles of her teammates with keen eyes. Naruto shocked everyone with his victory over Neji, proving that destiny could be challenged. Sasuke displayed his skills against Gaara, though his struggle with the curse mark loomed in the background. Sakura supported them as best she could, but in her heart she felt the sting of inadequacy. She wanted to be more than an observer, more than the one who watched from the sidelines. She carried that longing silently, waiting for the moment when she could rise again. But before the finals of the tournament could even be completed, Konoha was thrown into chaos. Orochimaru's plan unfolded, and the hidden leaf was invaded by the combined forces of the sand and the sound. The exam stadium became a battlefield. Shinobi clashed across the village, and civilians ran in terror. Sakura, caught in the storm, had to face the reality of war within her own home. During the invasion, her concern for Sasuke pulled her into danger. Sasuke pursued Gaara, whose transformation into the monstrous Shukaku threatened everyone around him. Naruto gave chase, determined to help, and Sakura, unwilling to abandon either of them, followed. What she found was a confrontation that spiraled beyond anything she had seen before. Gaara's power was monstrous, his rage consuming him, and Sasuke was pushed to his limit. In the chaos, Sakura was captured by Gaara, pinned helplessly as his sand wrapped around her. The fear was suffocating, but what hurt more was the sense of being powerless once again, watching as her teammates fought desperately to protect her. Sasuke, exhausted and weakened by the curse mark's effects, tried to stand against Gaara but could not prevail. It was Naruto who rose in that moment, unleashing everything he had to protect both Sasuke and Sakura. His determination lit up the battlefield, proving again that his will to never give up was stronger than any monster. Sakura could do little but witness the clash. She saw Naruto, the boy she had once dismissed, standing bravely against a foe who had terrified even Sasuke. She saw him refuse to let despair claim victory, and she realized again how much strength resided in him. When Naruto finally subdued Gaara, forcing him to see the value of bonds and friendship, Sakura felt pride and awe. Her teammate, the loud and clumsy boy she had once ignored, had become the hero of the village that day. When the dust settled, Konoha bore heavy scars. The third Hokage had fallen in battle against Orochimaru, sacrificing himself to protect the village. For Sakura, the loss was overwhelming. She had grown up under the guidance of the third's leadership, and though she had not known him personally, the sorrow that spread through the village touched her deeply. It was another reminder that even the strongest could fall, that even the village itself was not invincible. For Sakura, the Chunin exams and the invasion of Konoha were a turning point. She had fought her childhood friend to a draw, proven her willpower, and endured the terror of war. But she had also been reminded of her limitations. She was not yet strong enough to stand as an equal beside Naruto and Sasuke. She was not yet capable of protecting them when it mattered most. That realization weighed heavily on her, shaping the path she would soon choose. As she looked at her teammates, she saw a future that frightened her. Sasuke was slipping further into darkness, his obsession with power deepening after his encounter with Gaara and his frustration with the curse mark. Naruto, though heroic, continued to throw himself into danger with reckless abandon, and she, standing between them, felt powerless to hold the team together. Yet deep down, she knew she had to try. The days that followed the invasion were filled with mourning and rebuilding. The village slowly picked itself back up, scars visible, but the will of fire burning as brightly as ever. For Sakura, it was a time of reflection. She thought of her fight with Ino, of the strength it had taken to resist the mind transfer jutsu. She thought of Naruto's courage, Sasuke's struggle, and the fear she had felt when Gaara's sand held her captive. These memories burned into her, not as marks of failure, but as motivation. She wanted to be stronger. She wanted to be someone her teammates could rely on, not someone who needed saving. She wanted to protect them, not just watch them fight. The Chunin exams had begun as a chance to prove herself, but they had become something more. They were the mirror that showed her who she was and who she still needed to become. The invasion of Konoha ended one chapter of her life, but it opened the door to another. Ahead waited new challenges, new choices, and painful trials. But one thing was clear in Sakura's heart. She would not remain the same girl who stood in the background. She would find her strength, even if it meant walking a path she could not yet see. In the days and weeks after the invasion of Konoha, the village slowly stitched itself back together. Buildings were rebuilt, families mourned the dead, and shinobi tried to find some sense of normalcy again. For Team 7, however, things were anything but normal. The scars of the Chunin exams and the battle with Gaara lingered, and for Sakura, the weight of her own limitations pressed heavier than ever. She had stood in the middle of chaos, watching Naruto fight with unimaginable resolve, watching Sasuke push himself further into darkness, and feeling once more like she was powerless to keep up. Naruto, despite his recklessness, seemed to shine brighter with each passing day. He had faced Neji, a prodigy of the Hyuga clan, and turned the impossible into reality. He had stood against Gaara, when even Sasuke faltered and emerged as the unlikely hero. For Sakura, his growth was inspiring, but also humbling. She had seen firsthand that his dream of becoming Hokage was not just a childish fantasy, but a force that pushed him forward, unstoppable, no matter the obstacles in his way. Sasuke, on the other hand, had grown quieter, colder, and more restless. The curse mark branded onto him by Orochimaru gnawed at him, both physically and mentally. Sakura noticed the way he clenched his fists, the way his eyes burned with frustration whenever Naruto's strength was acknowledged. It was not that Sasuke resented Naruto's victories, but rather that each one reminded him of his own weakness. His mind was consumed by a single goal: to gain the power necessary to avenge his clan and kill his brother Itachi. For Sakura, watching Sasuke's struggle was agonizing. She cared for him deeply, perhaps more than she fully understood at the time, and she could sense that he was slipping further away from her, further away from the bonds they had built as a team. She wanted to reach out to him, to ease the pain she could see in his eyes, but every attempt seemed to slide off the wall he was building around himself. The breaking point came after Itachi returned to Konoha with Kisame. Sasuke, driven by rage, confronted his brother and was utterly crushed, forced to face once again how small he was compared to the power he sought to overcome. That encounter deepened the darkness already growing inside him. His pride was shattered, his need for revenge sharpened into something desperate, and his resolve to seek strength at any cost became unshakable. Sakura could sense the storm inside him, even if she could not see its full depth. She watched the way he distanced himself from Naruto, the way his training grew harsher, the way his gaze seemed to look past everyone, as if he was already walking a road none of them could follow. It frightened her. She did not want to lose him. Team 7 was more than just a squad to her, it was family. And Sasuke was the heart of the bond she treasured. But bonds alone were not enough to hold him back. One night, Sasuke made his choice. Orochimaru's envoys from the Sound Village came to lure him away, promising power beyond anything Konoha could give him. Sasuke, driven by his need for revenge, decided to leave the village. He saw no other path forward, no future in Konoha that could satisfy the hunger inside him. When Sakura discovered his plan, she ran to stop him. At the village gates, under the pale light of the moon, she confronted him. Her heart pounded, her voice trembled, but she poured everything she felt into her words. She begged him not to go, telling him that if he left, her life would be empty. She confessed her love, admitting openly what had always been clear in her heart. She pleaded with him to stay, to find his strength in the bonds they shared, rather than in the darkness of Orochimaru's promise. Sasuke listened, but his path had already been chosen. He thanked her for caring, thanked her for her feelings, but told her she could not understand his pain. His goal was vengeance, and nothing else mattered, not love, not friendship, not even his own safety. He raised his hand to the back of her neck, whispering a soft apology, and gently knocked her unconscious. He did not hate her, he did not dismiss her feelings. But he would not allow anything, not even Sakura's tears, to hold him back from his path of revenge. When she woke, Sasuke was gone. Her heart felt shattered, the weight of her helplessness pressing down harder than ever before. She had given everything she could in that moment, every word she thought might reach him, and still it had not been enough. The boy she loved had walked into darkness, and she could do nothing to stop him. The following day, when she realized that Sasuke's absence was no longer a secret, she turned to Naruto. Tears streaming down her face, she begged him to bring Sasuke back. She knew that Naruto, more than anyone else, would never give up on their teammate. She placed her trust in him, asking him to do what she could not, to fight for the bond she still believed could be saved. Naruto, moved by her desperation, made a promise. He swore on his life that he would bring Sasuke back, no matter what it took. That vow lit a spark of hope in Sakura's broken heart, but it also deepened the weight of her guilt. She knew that she had placed an impossible burden on Naruto, that she was asking him to fight battles she could not fight herself. Still, she clung to that promise, because it was the only thing left to hold on to. As the mission to retrieve Sasuke unfolded, Sakura was left behind in Konoha, forced to wait for news, while Naruto and the others risked their lives. Each day felt endless, each hour heavy with worry. She imagined Sasuke's face, Naruto's determination, the clash of bonds against the lure of vengeance. And when the mission ended in failure, when Naruto returned gravely injured and Sasuke remained lost to Orochimaru, the reality struck her like a blade. Her tears that day were not just for Sasuke, but for Naruto as well. He had given everything, fought with all he had, and still come back empty-handed. She felt guilty for placing that weight on him, for being powerless once again while others bled and sacrificed. The promise Naruto had made remained, but she began to realize that waiting and hoping were not enough. If she truly wanted to save Sasuke, if she truly wanted to protect Naruto, she could no longer remain the same. The night at the village gates marked the end of Sakura's childhood. The girl who once measured herself by her forehead, who once chased Sasuke with the eagerness of a crush, was gone. In her place was someone who understood loss, helplessness, and the cost of inaction. Sasuke had left, Naruto had nearly died trying to bring him back, and she had been left on the sidelines once again. But from that pain, a new determination began to grow. She could not continue to be the one who watched, the one who begged others to fight in her place. If she wanted to stand beside them, if she wanted to save the people she loved, she would need to become stronger. She would need to seek out her own path to power, not for recognition, but for the sake of her bonds. The loss of Sasuke and the failure of the retrieval mission closed one chapter of her life, but it also opened the door to the next. Ahead of her stood Tsunade, the fifth Hokage, a woman whose strength, intelligence, and willpower embodied everything Sakura longed to become. And though she did not yet know it, the training she was about to begin would shape her into one of the most formidable kunoichi of her generation. But on that night, as she remembered the quiet words Sasuke had spoken before leaving her unconscious at the village gates, all she felt was the ache of a bond broken, and the hope, however fragile, that one day it could be restored. The days after Sasuke's departure left a hollow ache in Sakura's heart. She had begged him to stay, poured all of her feelings into her words, and still he had walked away. Worse, he had left her unconscious on the cold ground, powerless to stop him. When Naruto returned gravely injured from the mission to retrieve him, her guilt deepened. She had asked Naruto to shoulder the burden she could not carry, to bring Sasuke back at all costs, and he had nearly died in the attempt. In her heart, she knew things could not remain the same. If she kept standing on the sidelines, if she kept relying on others to fight the battles that mattered most, she would only continue to lose the people she cared about. It was during this time of grief and reflection that Sakura began to look towards Tsunade. The fifth Hokage was a figure of immense strength, a legendary Sannin who combined medical brilliance with overwhelming combat ability. Tsunade had not only survived the darkest wars, but had risen to lead the village when it was most in need. To Sakura, she represented everything she wanted to become, a woman of power, intellect, and resilience who could protect her comrades rather than depend on them. Gathering her courage, Sakura approached Tsunade and asked to be taken on as her apprentice. Tsunade, though stern, saw potential in the young kunoichi. Sakura's sharp chakra control, intelligence, and determination were qualities that few her age possessed. She agreed to take her under her wing, but the training would not be easy. From the very beginning, Tsunade made it clear that this path required absolute dedication. Medical ninjutsu was not simply about healing wounds. It was about carrying the lives of comrades in one's hands, bearing the weight of responsibility that came with saving them. A mistake could mean death. Sakura accepted this challenge without hesitation, ready to devote herself entirely to becoming stronger. The training was grueling. Tsunade pushed Sakura to her limits, testing her precision, her stamina, and her resolve. Under her guidance, Sakura honed her chakra control to near perfection. Where others wasted energy, she learned to channel hers with exact accuracy, a skill that allowed her to perform medical techniques that demanded the utmost delicacy. At the same time, Tsunade introduced her to a different kind of power, the monstrous strength that came from focusing chakra into a single point before releasing it. Sakura's slender fists could shatter boulders, break through solid walls, and leave craters in the earth. For a girl who had once felt fragile and helpless, it was a revelation. Yet, the lessons extended beyond jutsu. Tsunade taught her what it meant to carry the title of a medic nin, to put the lives of others before her own, to remain calm in the face of chaos, and to act with clarity when everyone else was paralyzed by fear. She drilled into Sakura the principle that a medical ninja must never die before her comrades, because as long as she lived, she could continue to save others. These words struck deeply in Sakura's heart. After all the times she had watched helplessly as her friends suffered, she now held the key to making a difference. As the seasons passed, Sakura's growth became visible. Her once timid demeanor gave way to confidence. The girl who had fainted during the bell test was gone, replaced by someone who could hold her own in both healing and combat. Her bond with Tsunade deepened as well, forming not just the relationship of student and teacher, but something like a mother and daughter. For the first time, Sakura felt that she was on the path to becoming someone truly capable of standing beside Naruto and Sasuke. When Naruto returned from his training journey with Jiraiya, Sakura was no longer the same teammate he had left behind. She greeted him with warmth, but she also carried herself differently, stronger, more assured. She was eager to show him how far she had come, to prove that she had been working just as hard in his absence. Their reunion was filled with a sense of renewal. Though Sasuke was still gone, there was a new spark in the air, hope that they could continue to grow and one day bring him back together. Sakura's first opportunity to demonstrate the fruits of her training came sooner than she expected. When members of the Akatsuki began to move, she found herself face to face with an enemy far beyond the level of any she had faced before. Alongside Chiyo, an elder of the Sand Village, she engaged in battle against Sasori, a master puppeteer and one of the most dangerous members of the Akatsuki. It was a test not only of her physical strength, but of her heart, her training, and her ability to put everything Tsunade had taught her into practice. The fight was brutal and demanding. Sasori's puppets filled the battlefield with blades, poison, and traps. Chiyo guided Sakura with experience, but it was Sakura's precise chakra control and monstrous strength that allowed them to hold their ground. She smashed through puppet after puppet, dodging poisoned weapons with reflexes sharpened by months of training. When she was injured, she healed herself on the spot, refusing to falter. The battle lasted long, each moment demanding more from her than she thought she had to give. Yet she persevered, pushing herself further than ever before. In the end, though it was Chiyo who delivered the final strike, it was Sakura's unwavering resolve that carried them to victory. Her ability to stand firm against an opponent of Sasori's caliber proved to everyone, including herself, that she was no longer the same girl who once cried helplessly over Sasuke. She had become a true shinobi, someone who could shoulder responsibility and protect those around her. The victory was bittersweet. Sasori's death revealed information that would later guide them in their search for Sasuke, but it also underscored the reality of the world they lived in. Enemies were not always faceless monsters. Sasori, too, had once been a child, once been loved, once had bonds that shaped him. These truths weighed on Sakura, reminding her again that the shinobi world was not black and white. Through her training and this first great battle, Sakura began to find a sense of balance. Her love for Sasuke remained, her admiration for Naruto continued to grow, but she was also discovering her own identity apart from them. She was no longer defined solely by who she stood beside. She was beginning to define herself by the strength she had built, the lives she could save, and the future she could shape with her own hands. Her journey was still far from over. Sasuke was still gone. Naruto still carried the weight of the Nine Tails inside him, and the Akatsuki's shadow continued to spread. But for Sakura, the path ahead no longer seemed impossible. With Tsunade's guidance, she had stepped out of the role of bystander and into the role of a true kunoichi. She was ready to fight, to heal, and to do whatever it took to stand alongside her teammates again. And deep within her heart, she carried a promise. No matter how far Sasuke had gone, no matter how dark the path he walked, she would not give up on him. The girl who once wept helplessly at the village gates had been transformed into someone stronger, someone who believed she could one day help bring him home. 2.5 years passed after Sasuke's defection, years in which Sakura dedicated herself fully to Tsunade's training. She poured every ounce of her determination into becoming stronger, mastering medical ninjutsu, sharpening her chakra control, and learning how to harness the raw power of focus strikes that could level solid stone. Day after day she pushed herself beyond exhaustion, reminding herself constantly of the night at the village gates when Sasuke had walked away, and of the promise Naruto had made to bring him back. She knew that when they reunited, she could not remain the same girl who had always been the weakest link. She wanted to stand beside them as an equal. When Naruto returned from his own journey with Jiraiya, Sakura felt that familiar warmth of seeing a friend again, but she also felt a surge of pride in herself. She was different now, and she wanted him to see it. Their reunion was light-hearted at first, filled with banter and teasing, but beneath it was a current of determination. Both of them had changed. Both of them had grown. Sasuke was still gone, but their bond as teammates was still intact, stronger perhaps for the time they had been apart. Their first missions together confirmed the changes. Naruto was stronger, more mature in some ways, though his impulsiveness had not disappeared. Sakura was calmer, more focused, and when danger came, she was no longer the one standing helplessly in the back. She stepped forward, healing wounds, striking with force, and thinking clearly under pressure. Kakashi, watching his students with quiet pride, could see that they were no longer children. Team 7 was different now, but the bond was still there, unbroken even by time and loss. The true test of Sakura's growth came when the Akatsuki began to move openly. Their goal of hunting down the Jinchuriki led to a confrontation that brought Sakura face to face with an enemy unlike any she had ever fought before. Alongside Chiyo, an elder from the Hidden Sand, she found herself battling Sasori, a master puppeteer, and one of the most dangerous members of the Akatsuki. It was not just another mission. It was a fight for survival against someone who had long since abandoned his humanity. The battle was unlike anything Sakura had experienced. Sasori controlled his puppets with lethal precision, filling the air with hidden blades, poison, and traps. His arsenal seemed endless, his strategies layered and intricate. Yet Sakura stood her ground. Guided by Chiyo's experience, she moved with purpose, shattering puppets with her monstrous strength, dodging deadly weapons with reflexes sharpened by training, and healing herself when wounds broke through her defenses. Each strike of her fist carried the weight of Tsunade's teachings, and each breath she took was a reminder that she was no longer the helpless girl of the past. The fight tested not only her physical ability, but her heart. Sasori himself was a tragic figure, a boy once loved and cherished, who had turned his back on humanity in pursuit of control. As she fought him, Sakura was reminded of Sasuke, of how easily someone could lose themselves to obsession and despair. She pushed these thoughts aside, focusing on the battle, but they lingered in her heart, giving her even greater resolve. The poison that coated Sasori's weapons was deadly, and without her medical training, Sakura would not have survived. Time and again, she administered antidotes, countered his traps, and pressed forward despite the exhaustion building in her body. Chiyo relied on her heavily, and though the elder gave guidance, it was Sakura's strength and willpower that carried the fight. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity as the battle raged, neither side willing to yield. When the final moments came, Sakura gave everything she had, Working in perfect synchronization with Chiyo, she created the opening that allowed the elder to land the decisive blow. Sasori fell, defeated not only by skill, but by the will of someone who refused to back down. As he lay dying, he revealed information that would later guide them in their search for Orochimaru, and with him, Sasuke. His words carried a strange weight, a reminder that even enemies had once been children, once been loved, once carried dreams of their own. When the battle was over, Sakura collapsed from exhaustion. Her body ached, her chakra reserves nearly depleted, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. She had faced one of the Akatsuki and survived. More than that, she had proven to herself and to others that she was no longer someone who needed protection. She had fought, she had endured, and she had won. For the first time, she truly felt like she could stand beside Naruto and Sasuke, not as someone trailing behind, but as their equal. The mission left a lasting mark on her. The weight of victory was mixed with the sorrow of seeing what someone like Sasori had become. It reminded her again of Sasuke, of the danger of losing oneself to darkness, and of the importance of fighting to preserve bonds. She thought often of the way Sasori had chosen to abandon his humanity, and wondered if Sasuke's path would lead him to the same kind of emptiness. The fear of that possibility became another driving force in her determination to bring him back. In the days that followed, her comrades and allies looked at her differently. No longer was she seen as the weakest of Team 7. She was respected as someone who had stood against one of the most feared enemies of their time and survived. Her teacher, Tsunade, was proud, recognizing that her student had carried her teachings into battle with grace and strength. And Naruto, though still driven by his own relentless goals, looked at Sakura with admiration, knowing she had proven herself in ways neither of them could have imagined back when they first began. Though Sakura had taken a great step forward, she knew the road ahead would not be easy. The Akatsuki remained a looming threat, their shadows stretching further across the shinobi world. Orochimaru still held Sasuke in his grasp, and the distance between them seemed wider than ever. Each victory felt like progress, but also like a reminder of how much remained undone. Still, she no longer felt powerless. She had the strength to fight, the skill to heal, and the will to keep moving forward no matter the obstacles. Her journey was far from over, but in the quiet moments after the battle with Sasori, as she lay recovering from her wounds, Sakura allowed herself a small, quiet smile. She had chosen this path because she wanted to protect her friends, because she wanted to bring Sasuke back, and because she no longer wanted to feel the helplessness that had once defined her. Now, she could finally see that she was on the right road. The girl who once worried about her forehead, who once hid behind her teammates, had grown into someone capable of standing her ground against the darkness of the world. And though the challenges ahead would test her more than ever before, she carried within her the unshakable truth that she was no longer the weak link of Team 7. She was Sakura Haruno, apprentice of Tsunade, medical ninja, warrior, and friend. And she would not stop until the bonds she cherished were restored, no matter how far she had to go or how much pain she had to endure. Gathered intelligence, followed leads, and pushed themselves against impossible odds. With every whisper of Orochimaru's movements, with every rumor of Sasuke's presence, Sakura's heart raced. Part of her longed desperately for his return, for the boy who had once smiled at her and fought beside her. Another part of her feared what she might find. The longer he stayed away, the more she realized that the Sasuke she remembered might no longer exist. The first time she saw him again after his defection was seared into her memory. He stood before them, colder than she had ever imagined, his eyes empty, his presence heavy with the weight of choices he had already made. For Sakura, seeing him like that was both a relief and a heartbreak. Relief because he was alive, and heartbreak because he was not the same. The boy she had loved felt distant, unreachable, and yet she could not let go of the hope that somewhere inside him, the Sasuke she knew still remained. In that moment her emotions collided. She wanted to rush to him, to beg him to come home, to tell him that Team 7 was not complete without him. But she also saw how little her words mattered to him then. He had chosen his path, one carved by vengeance and fueled by hatred for Itachi. Nothing she said could sway him. Watching him turn away from them again was like reopening a wound that had never truly healed. Each encounter with Sasuke after that only deepened her inner conflict. She still loved him. That much was undeniable, but she also began to see how dangerous he had become. The more he embraced Orochimaru's teachings, the further he drifted from the bonds of their youth. Sakura wrestled constantly with the question of what it meant to love someone who walked willingly into darkness. Could she continue to hope for his return, or would there come a day when she would have to fight him as an enemy? The weight of that question grew heavier with each passing mission. Naruto carried it too, though his determination never wavered. He reminded her constantly that he would fulfill his promise, that he would bring Sasuke back no matter what. Sakura admired his persistence, but it also hurt to see him shoulder so much. She felt guilty for placing that promise on him years ago, for asking him to fight battles she could not fight. Watching Naruto bleed and suffer in his quest to save Sasuke made her want to protect him as much as she wanted to save Sasuke. She found herself caught in the middle, torn between her love for one and her loyalty to the other, desperate to keep them both safe, but unable to bridge the gap between them. Her frustration with herself grew. She had trained for years, mastered skills that few her age could match, and still she felt powerless in the face of this divide. Healing comrades and shattering stone meant little when the bond that mattered most slipped further and further out of reach. At times, she wondered if she was truly capable of making a difference, or if she was destined to watch from the sidelines as Naruto and Sasuke hurt each other in pursuit of conflicting paths. There came a point when her desperation nearly drove her to an impossible decision. Believing that Sasuke could no longer be saved, she resolved to take his life herself. Her reasoning was not born of hatred, but of love twisted by sorrow. She thought that ending his path of vengeance might be the only way to free him from the curse of hatred and to spare Naruto the pain of chasing him forever. Gathering her courage, she set out to confront him, kunai in hand, heart heavy with grief. But when the moment came, she could not do it. Standing before Sasuke, seeing his face and hearing his voice, her resolve faltered. Her love for him outweighed her plan, and the kunai trembled in her hand until it slipped away. The truth was clear. She could not kill him, no matter how far he had fallen. The bond she felt was too deep, the hope too persistent. Even when logic told her it was hopeless, her heart refused to let go. This failure left her shaken, torn between relief and despair. She had not committed the act she dreaded, but she also had not changed anything. Sasuke walked on, unchanged by her presence, unshaken by her tears. Once again, she was left standing in the wake of his absence, questioning what she could have done differently, what she could possibly do next. Through all of this, Naruto stood as her anchor. He never wavered in his belief that Sasuke could be saved, never once doubted the value of their bond. His determination lifted her when her own resolve faltered, reminding her that as long as they both kept trying, hope remained alive. Sakura began to see him more clearly than ever before. not as the loud and clumsy boy she had once dismissed, but as someone whose strength came not only from power, but from the unbreakable spirit within him. Her love for Sasuke did not disappear, but her admiration for Naruto deepened. She began to understand that strength was not only about jutsu or training, but about the will to keep moving forward no matter how many times you fall. Naruto embodied that truth, and it inspired her to keep trying, even when everything seemed hopeless. Still, the tension between her feelings never truly went away. She lived in the space between love and duty, torn by conflicting emotions, unable to resolve them fully. It was a painful place to be, but it was also what gave her determination its depth. She was fighting not just for herself, not just for the village, but for the bonds that defined her life. As Shippuden continued, and the battles against the Akatsuki grew more frequent, Sakura's skills as a medic nin and a fighter became invaluable. She healed countless comrades, stood firm in battles where others might have broken, and proved time and again that she was no longer the weak link of Team 7. Yet inside, she still carried that ache, that unhealed wound named Sasuke. Every time she saw him, every time she heard his name, she felt the pull of both love and sorrow. He was a reminder of what she had lost, but also of why she continued to fight. She could not let go of him, just as she could not let go of Naruto's promise. These conflicting emotions did not weaken her, they fueled her. They gave her the strength to keep pushing forward, even when the path ahead seemed impossible. And so Sakura's story in these years became one of pursuit and struggle, of searching for a teammate who had become a stranger, and of wrestling with her own heart as she tried to reconcile love, loyalty, and the harsh duties of a shinobi. She did not have all the answers, and she did not always succeed, but she never stopped trying. Her growth was no longer just about strength of body or skill of hand. It was about resilience of spirit, about refusing to let go of the bonds that defined her, no matter how much they hurt. She knew that the road ahead would only become harder, that Sasuke's choices would grow darker, and that Naruto's burden would grow heavier. But she also knew that she would walk that road beside them, no matter how far it led, because that was who she had become. The world of shinobi had always lived with the weight of conflict, but when the Fourth Great Ninja War erupted, it felt as though all of history's pain and hatred had returned at once. For Sakura, who had once been just a girl, worried about her forehead and her place beside two powerful teammates, the war was the ultimate test of everything she had learned. No longer a child, no longer the weakest link, she stepped onto the battlefield with determination in her heart and Tsunade's teachings flowing through her veins. The allied shinobi forces were vast, drawing together ninja from every village, from clans that had once been rivals, from people who had once seen each other as enemies. For Sakura, it was both humbling and frightening to stand among so many seasoned warriors, but she also knew she belonged there. She had trained for this, bled for this, and carried within her the will to protect lives that others might overlook. From the very beginning, her role was critical. As a medical ninja, she worked tirelessly to heal the wounded. The war brought injury after injury, wave after wave of blood and suffering, and Sakura never faltered. Her hands glowed with green chakra late into the night, stitching torn flesh, purging poison, and pulling comrades back from the edge of death. Each life she saved reminded her of why she had chosen this path. It was not just about strength in battle, but about ensuring that others could go home to their families, that hope could survive, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. Yet she was not only a healer. When the front lines demanded it, Sakura fought with all the ferocity Tsunade had instilled in her. Her fists shattered the earth, scattering enemy forces and protecting the comrades behind her. The soldiers who once might have dismissed her as delicate soon looked to her as a pillar of strength, someone who could be relied upon not just for healing, but for leading by example. Even in the midst of her contributions, there was a deeper power stirring inside her. For years she had trained under Tsunade, watching her teacher use a technique that marked the pinnacle of medical ninjutsu, the strength of 100 seal. This forbidden power required storing chakra over an extended period of time, months, and even years of careful preparation, until it could be released in an instant to heal wounds, enhance strength, and sustain life even in the direst of battles. Sakura had been preparing this seal silently, diligently, all through her training and missions. Now, in the chaos of war, she finally unleashed it. The mark bloomed on her forehead, a symbol of her mastery of Tsunade's greatest technique. In that moment, Sakura stood not just as her teacher's student, but as her successor. The glow of the seal coursed through her, amplifying her strength and granting her near-limitless stamina. To those who witnessed it, the timid girl of the academy was gone. In her place stood a kunoichi who could stand shoulder to shoulder with legends. With the seal awakened, Sakura's presence on the battlefield became undeniable. She healed entire platoons, crushed enemy forces with single strikes, and lifted the spirits of everyone around her. She was no longer the teammate trailing behind Naruto and Sasuke. She was fighting beside them, her fists striking as fiercely as their blades and jutsu. For the first time, she truly felt like the equal she had always longed to be. The war, however, was merciless. The reanimation jutsu unleashed countless fallen shinobi, forcing the living to face ghosts of the past. Sakura saw comrades struggle against those they had once loved, saw the pain etched into every battle. Yet she remained steady. She knew her role was not only to fight, but to keep hope alive, to remind everyone that even in the darkest storm, the will of fire still burned. Her bond with Naruto deepened during these days. She watched as he threw himself again and again into danger, carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. She healed him when he faltered, stood by him when exhaustion threatened to consume him, and believed in him even when others doubted. At the same time, she could not ignore the weight of Sasuke's absence. Though he eventually returned to the battlefield, his presence was complicated, his motives clouded, and Sakura's heart wrestled constantly with the same mixture of love, pain, and uncertainty that had haunted her for years. When she stood beside both of them again, Naruto, Sasuke, and herself reunited as Team 7, it felt almost unreal. They had once been children, fumbling through their first missions, and now they stood as the last line of defense in a war that would determine the fate of the world. Sakura did not feel small beside them anymore. She felt like she belonged. The promise she had once made to herself to become strong enough to stand with them was finally fulfilled. Her resolve was tested again and again as the war escalated. The battles against the reanimated Hokage, against Obito, and against Madara pushed everyone to their limits. Sakura fought not only with her fists but with her heart, healing, protecting, and never giving in to despair. When Tsunade herself was gravely injured, Sakura stepped forward without hesitation, carrying on her mentor's legacy in real time. She was no longer just Tsunade's student, she was her successor, proving that the will of fire passed from teacher to student, unbroken. There were moments in the war when Sakura feared she would lose everything. The sheer scale of destruction threatened to swallow the shinobi world whole. Yet even in those moments, she remembered her vow not to remain powerless. She remembered Naruto's determination, Sasuke's struggle, Tsunade's lessons, and the countless lives she had sworn to protect. And so she fought, healed, and endured, because she knew there was no other choice. Her awakening of the strength of 100 seal was not just a demonstration of power. It was the culmination of years of growth, of pain and determination woven together. It was proof that she had transformed from the insecure girl of her youth into one of the strongest kunoichi of her time. The war demanded everything of her, but it also revealed everything she had become. As the battles raged on, and the fate of the world hung in the balance, Sakura no longer doubted herself. She knew who she was, she knew what she stood for, and she knew that she would fight until her very last breath to protect the bonds she cherished. Standing beside Naruto and Sasuke, she was no longer afraid of being left behind. She had caught up to them, not only in strength, but in resolve. And though the war was not yet finished, though even greater battles lay ahead, Sakura carried within her the quiet certainty that she was ready. She had trained for this, lived for this, and grown into it step by step. The kunoichi, who once fainted during her first test, was gone forever. In her place stood a healer, a warrior, and a friend, determined to see the world through its darkest night and into. As the war reached its final stages, the battles grew more surreal, as though the very world had begun to unravel. The enemies that Sakura and her comrades faced were no longer human in any ordinary sense. Obito and Madara had already pushed the limits of power beyond anything the shinobi world had seen, and when Kaguya Tsutsuki herself appeared, it felt as if the pages of legend had spilled into reality. For Sakura, standing on that battlefield was like standing before the embodiment of a nightmare. Yet she did not run. She had come too far to falter now, and she knew that Naruto and Sasuke would need her more than ever. Kaguya's power was overwhelming. She bent dimensions to her will, reshaping landscapes in an instant, shifting from scorching deserts to frozen wastelands, from endless lava fields to skies filled with nothing but choking ash. In each new world, death seemed inevitable, and yet Team 7 pressed on. Naruto's determination burned as brightly as ever. Sasuke's Sharingan cut through illusions and possibilities, and Kakashi guided them with the calm presence of a teacher who had watched them grow from children into warriors. Beside them, Sakura fought with all the strength she had built, her chakra seal blazing on her forehead, her fists striking with force that could shatter the very ground beneath them. Her role was not always in the forefront, but it was never meaningless. While Naruto and Sasuke wielded powers that rivaled gods, Sakura grounded their team, healing their wounds, buying time when the odds were against them, and striking when the opportunity appeared. She knew she could not match the scale of their abilities, but she also knew she did not need to. Her strength lay in being the one who refused to break, who refused to let despair take hold, and who struck with perfect timing when the chance came. The battle pushed them further than they had ever gone before. Each dimension Kaguya created sapped their energy, tested their teamwork, and forced them to think quickly or be consumed. More than once, Sakura felt the edge of exhaustion pulling at her, but she looked at Naruto and Sasuke and reminded herself why she was there. This was not just another mission, this was the end. If they failed, there would be no future left to save. That thought alone was enough to keep her moving, enough to silence her doubts. Kakashi, though weary and wounded, carried on as well, his leadership steady, his Sharingan guiding him through impossible moments. In those desperate hours, Team 7 rediscovered what had always bound them together. They were no longer teacher and students, no longer children fumbling through their first lessons, but equals united by a shared bond. Sakura felt it every time she glanced at them. No matter how much had changed, no matter how far they had drifted apart, this was still Team 7. And in the heart of battle, that bond became their greatest weapon. The decisive moment came when Kaguya, vast and terrifying, left herself vulnerable. Naruto and Sasuke moved to strike, their combined power ready to seal her, but it was Sakura who created the final opening. She surged forward, her chakra focused into one devastating blow, and struck Kaguya with all the force she had built through years of training. The impact drove Kaguya back, giving Naruto and Sasuke the chance they needed to complete the sealing jutsu. It was not the flashiest move, not the godlike power of a Jinchuriki or a Uchiha heir, but it was essential. Without Sakura's strength, without her timing, without her willingness to push past her own limits, the battle could have slipped away. In that moment, she was not overshadowed by her teammates. She was their equal, a vital part of the team that had saved the world. When the battle finally ended, when Kaguya was sealed and the dimensions settled, Sakura felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. She had poured everything she had into the fight, every ounce of chakra, every ounce of willpower, but she also felt pride. The promise she had once made to herself, to stand beside Naruto and Sasuke, to be more than someone who needed saving, had been fulfilled in the most complete way. She had fought at the center of history, not as a bystander, but as a warrior whose actions mattered. The victory, however, did not bring immediate peace. Naruto and Sasuke, united against Kaguya, still carried their own unresolved conflict. When Sasuke declared his intention to sever the system of the shinobi world by destroying the old order, Sakura's heart sank. Even after everything, even after standing beside them to save the world, Sasuke still walked the path of darkness. She pleaded with him, begged him not to throw away what they had built together, but once again her words could not reach him. The weight of his pain, the depth of his desire for revenge, were walls too thick to break with words alone. When Naruto and Sasuke finally faced each other in the Valley of the End, Sakura could do nothing but wait. Her heart ached as she thought of the promise she had forced on Naruto years ago, the promise to bring Sasuke back. She knew that whatever the outcome of their fight, her life would be changed forever. If Sasuke died, she would lose the person she had loved since childhood. If Naruto failed, the boy who had carried her hope for so long would fall. She could only pray that their bond would prove stronger than hatred. And in the end, it did. Naruto and Sasuke, bloodied and broken, found each other again in the quiet aftermath of their clash. When she arrived to heal them, tears blurred her vision. They were both alive, both scarred but still breathing. And though Sasuke had chosen his path of vengeance for so long, in that moment he finally acknowledged her, finally acknowledged Naruto, and accepted the bond they had never given up on. For Sakura, it was the closing of a circle that had begun years earlier. From the day she first joined Team 7, through every trial, every tear, every desperate plea at the village gates, she had carried the hope that their bond could survive. And now, as she knelt beside them, her hands glowing with healing chakra, she realized that it had. They had endured the war, endured the darkness, and endured themselves. The world could now move into peace because the three of them had refused to let go of each other. The war was over, and the girl who had once fainted at the sight of danger had become a woman who had struck the goddess of chakra herself. Her growth was undeniable, her place in history secure, and her bond with her teammates unbroken. And though the scars of the war would never truly fade, Sakura Haruno carried within her the certainty that she had fulfilled her promise to herself and to those she loved. When the dust of the Fourth Great Ninja War finally settled, the shinobi world found itself in a silence it had not known for generations. The cries of battle and the clash of jutsu faded, and for the first time in years, people dared to breathe, without fear of what tomorrow might bring. For Sakura Haruno, the end of the war brought with it not just relief, but a wave of emotions so deep she could hardly process them. She had fought through exhaustion, poured her heart into healing the wounded, delivered a decisive strike against Kaguya herself, and kept Naruto and Sasuke alive long enough for them to decide the fate of the world. Now, as peace crept slowly back into every corner of the land, she felt both the pride of accomplishment and the weariness of someone who had carried more weight than she ever thought she could. The war had changed her. The girl who had once fainted during her first mission, who had once begged others to fight battles she could not, was gone forever. What remained was a kunoichi who had stood at the heart of history, who had proven her worth not only to the world, but to herself. She no longer questioned whether she belonged beside Naruto and Sasuke. She knew she did. Yet peace brought with it new challenges, challenges that could not be solved with fists or chakra, but with patience, forgiveness, and the willingness to build something new. Sasuke's return to Konoha was not simple. He had chosen life over hatred in the Valley of the End, had chosen to accept Naruto's bond instead of severing it, but his path was still complicated. For many in the village, he was a figure of both salvation and betrayal, a man who had helped to defeat Kaguya, yet had also tried to impose his own brand of revolution on the world. Trust did not come easily, and for Sasuke, who had lived so long in solitude and vengeance, the idea of belonging again was almost foreign. For Sakura, however, his return was not about politics or judgment. It was about the boy she had loved for so long, the teammate she had cried over and chased after, the person whose choices had caused her more pain than anyone else, but who had also been the center of her heart. She did not need him to be perfect. She only needed him to stay, to allow himself to be connected again, to allow her love and Naruto's friendship to anchor him. Their reconciliation was not marked by fireworks or dramatic speeches. It was built instead in quiet words, in long silences that carried more weight than arguments, and in moments when Sasuke allowed himself to acknowledge the bonds he had once rejected. His apology was soft, understated, but when he told her he was sorry for the pain he had caused, Sakura felt her heart ache with both grief and relief. She had waited years for those words, but what mattered more was that they were real. He was not the same boy who had once turned his back on her. He had grown, and so had she. When Sasuke chose to leave the village again, this time to atone and to see the world through new eyes, Sakura's reaction showed just how much she had changed. Years earlier, she had begged him to stay, had wept at the thought of losing him, had thrown herself at his feet in desperation. Now she did not. She understood his journey was not one of hatred, but one of healing. Instead of clinging, she gave him her trust. She promised she would wait for him, not as the insecure girl desperate for his attention, but as a woman strong enough to love him without trying to cage him. That trust became the foundation of their new bond, a bond built not on desperation, but on understanding. In the years that followed, peace began to blossom throughout the shinobi world. Villages rebuilt themselves stronger than before. Alliances that had once been fragile grew firm, and for the first time in memory, people could look to the horizon without expecting war. Sakura poured herself into this new era with the same determination she had shown in battle. At the hospital, she became one of Konoha's greatest healers, pushing the boundaries of medical ninjutsu further than ever before. She carried Tsunade's legacy proudly, ensuring that no one would forget the value of a medic on the battlefield or in times of peace. She trained others as well, teaching new generations of shinobi that healing was not weakness, but strength of the highest order. She passed down Tsunade's lessons with care, instilling in them the principle that as long as a healer lived, there was still hope. Her reputation grew, not as the girl of Team 7, not as the one who once stood in Naruto and Sasuke's shadow, but as Sakura Haruno, the strongest medic of her time. A warrior whose fists could shatter stone, and whose hands could knit flesh back together. Yet her greatest transformation came not in the hospital or on the battlefield, but within the quiet walls of her home. When she and Sasuke finally began a life together, it was not the fairy tale she had once dreamed of as a girl with a crush. It was quieter, messier, and far more real. Sasuke was not always present. His journeys of redemption kept him away for long stretches of time. Their life together was often defined by waiting, by distance, and by the knowledge that his path would never fully align with hers. And yet it worked, because the bond between them was no longer fragile. It was built on trust, respect, and love tempered by years of hardship. That bond deepened further with the birth of their daughter, Sarada. For Sakura, holding her child for the first time was a moment unlike any she had ever known. She had fought gods, had healed armies, had stared into the eyes of death more times than she could count, but nothing compared to the weight of a new life cradled in her arms. Sarada was proof that even in a world scarred by war, love could create something new, something pure. Motherhood changed Sakura in ways she had not expected. She had once measured her strength by her ability to fight, by her place beside Naruto and Sasuke. Now, she measured it in gentler ways, by the patience it took to raise a child, by the resilience needed to comfort Sarada through loneliness, by the quiet sacrifices of a parent determined to give her daughter the love and security she herself had once struggled to find. Raising Sarada was its own kind of battle, one that required not chakra or fists, but endless compassion and strength of spirit. Life with Sasuke was not without its difficulties. His long absences were hard on both Sakura and Sarada, and there were moments of tension, moments when the weight of being apart seemed unbearable. Sarada, especially as she grew older, sometimes questioned her father's love, unable to understand why he was gone so often. For Sakura, those questions were painful, but she met them with honesty and steadiness. She reassured Sarada again and again that Sasuke's love was real, even if his presence was rare. She reminded her that bonds were not always measured by time spent together, but by the depth of feeling that endured despite distance. Sakura carried the household alone in those years, and though it was hard, she never let bitterness consume her. She had chosen this life with open eyes, and she accepted its challenges with the same resilience that had carried her through war. In time, Sarada grew to see her mother's strength, not just in battle, but in the quiet endurance of everyday life. Sakura became her role model, the person who showed her that strength and love could exist side by side, that compassion could be as powerful as any jutsu. In the quiet moments, when the day's duties were done and the house fell silent, Sakura often reflected on her journey. She thought of the shy girl she had once been, embarrassed by her forehead and unsure of her worth. She thought of the academy days filled with laughter, rivalry, and small crushes. She thought of the night she cut her hair in the forest of death, the moment she realized she had to stop waiting for others to save her. She thought of the tears she shed when Sasuke left, of the vow she made to become stronger, of the countless hours training under Tsunade until her hands bled and her body ached. And she thought of the war, of the gods they had faced, of the moment she struck Kaguya, and of healing Naruto and Sasuke at the very edge of death. Now, all of that was behind her. What lay ahead was not battle but life. The life she had fought so hard to protect, the life she had almost never dared to dream she could have. She was a healer, a mother, a wife, and still a warrior when duty called. She had found her place not by chasing others, but by becoming someone who could stand proudly on her own. Peace was not always easy. It came with its own challenges, its own trials, but for Sakura, it was worth every sacrifice. Every moment with Sarada, every letter from Sasuke, every life she saved in the hospital, these were the victories that mattered now. She had finally reached a place where she did not need to prove her worth to anyone. She was living it every single day. Other children could laugh with their fathers in the streets, while she had only stories and letters. Those questions stung Sakura deeply, but she always answered with honesty and warmth. She reminded Sarada that Sasuke's love was unwavering, that his distance was not abandonment but sacrifice, that he walked his path so she could live freely. In those moments, Sakura bore the weight of being both mother and father, keeping the household together with the same resilience that had once carried her through war. She worked tirelessly at the hospital, training new generations of medical ninja, and still returned home to cook meals, to listen to Sarada's stories, to comfort her when loneliness struck. It was exhausting at times, but it was also fulfilling. Every sacrifice she made was worth it when she saw the determination in her daughter's eyes, the strength beginning to bloom in her heart. As Sarada grew older, she began to dream of becoming Hokage. For Sakura, this dream stirred a mix of pride and worry. She knew better than anyone the weight of that role, the burden of protecting not just comrades, but an entire village. She had seen what it had cost Naruto, what it had cost Tsunade, what it had cost every Hokage before them. Yet she did not discourage her daughter. Instead, she supported her, training her when she could, teaching her not only how to fight, but how to endure, how to care, and how to balance strength with compassion. She told Sarada that true leadership was not about power, but about love, the love of one's people, one's friends, and one's family. Through her guidance, Sarada grew strong. She inherited not only the Uchiha fire, but also Sakura's resilience and intelligence. Watching her daughter spar, watching her eyes light up with determination, Sakura often felt her heart swell with pride. Sarada was proof that all the pain, all the battles, all the sacrifices had been worth it. The next generation would carry the torch forward, not in the shadow of war, but in the light of peace. Sakura's role in the village remained vital. As head of Konoha's medical corps, she led advancements in healing that ensured no shinobi would have to suffer unnecessarily. She established systems that could respond to disasters swiftly, trained medics who could accompany every mission, and developed techniques that saved lives in ways even Tsunade had only dreamed of. Her name became synonymous not only with strength, but with hope. For many, she was the face of the village's healing spirit, the person who proved that compassion could be as powerful as any weapon. Even so, she never abandoned her role as a warrior. When threats arose, when remnants of the old world clawed their way back into peace, Sakura fought with the same ferocity she had shown in the war. She remained one of Konoha's strongest defenders, her fists still capable of shattering the ground, her chakra seal still glowing with the strength she had mastered years ago. To younger shinobi, she was a legend, a figure who embodied the balance of healer and fighter, of mother and hero. Her relationship with Sasuke remained unconventional, shaped by his continued wanderings. He was often absent, sometimes for years at a time, but when he returned, their bond was unshakable. Their love was not defined by constant presence, but by trust and understanding. Sakura knew his path was necessary, and Sasuke knew her love was steadfast. When they were together, it was enough. And though Sarada sometimes struggled with his absences, she too grew to understand the depth of the bond her parents shared. In the quiet moments, When Sakura stood in her home watching her daughter study or train, when she read Sasuke's letters or waited for his return, she often reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the girl who once sat in the academy classroom, shy and self-conscious. She remembered the tears she shed when Sasuke left, the helplessness she felt when Naruto promised to do what she could not. She remembered cutting her hair in the forest of death, begging Tsunade to train her, and striking Kaguya with every ounce of strength she had. All of those moments, all of that pain and growth, had led to this life. A life where she was not defined by her weaknesses, but by her strength, not by her insecurities, but by her love. Her legacy was not only in the battles she had fought, but in the life she had built afterward. She was a healer who had saved countless lives, a fighter who had stood against gods, a wife who had forgiven and endured, and a mother who raised the next generation with hope and determination. For Sakura, that was enough. She did not need monuments or songs. She did not need her name carved into history. Her legacy lived in every patient she healed, in every lesson she taught, in every smile Sarada gave her, and in the quiet knowledge that she had kept her bonds alive even when the world tried to tear them apart. As time moved forward, she continued to stand as one of the pillars of Konoha. The village grew, technology transformed the way shinobi lived, and new challenges arose in unexpected forms. Yet Sakura remained steady, adapting to each change, carrying the will of fire into a new era. Her life was no longer about chasing others, no longer about proving herself. It was about living fully, loving deeply, and ensuring that the future would shine brighter than the past. And when she thought of the girl she had once been, the girl who worried endlessly about her forehead and believed she had nothing special to offer, Sakura sometimes smiled softly. That girl would never have believed the life she now lived. She would never have imagined holding her daughter close, never imagined standing as one of the strongest kunoichi of her time, never imagined surviving so much and still finding joy. But that girl had grown, step by step, into the woman she was now, strong, steady, and filled with love. This was her story's continuation, not in the roar of battle, but in the quiet strength of peace. The war had made her a legend, but it was in peace that she found her true purpose. She was Sakura Haruno, wife, mother, healer, warrior, and friend. And her legacy was not only in the past she had lived, but in the future she continued to shape.